On today's episode of Homestand Sports, Blue Jays. We're talking Blue Jays baseball. I'm bringing on Andrew Zuber, a.k.a. the Zoobs. He was on last week. We're actually previewing the big series against the Texas Rangers for the Blue Jays. And what happens? They go out and get swept in the most important series of the season. And then they follow that up with a series sweep against the Boston Red Sox in dramatic fashion where you get everything. Walk-offs and misplays and home runs from Vladdy. Biggio looks like his dad, Craig Biggio. The pitching looks fantastic. All is good and well with the Toronto Blue Jays. So I talked to the Zoos about that and how do you make sense of the MLB? It feels like it's upside down. How do you make sense of the Blue Jays and what they're doing right now? We talk about all that. We talk about David Schneider, who started off his MLB career. He was fantastic. One of the greatest starts in baseball history, is now 0 for 20 in his last 5 games. Is that a cause for concern? George Springer, 1 for 20 in that same amount of time. How concerning is that, considering he's one of your go-to guys and can possibly be dubbed Mr. October, at least on this Jays team? They don't have that much experience, but they're going to lean on Springer heading into the playoffs if they get there. We also preview a big series coming up against the Yankees. They finish off their last 12 games against the season against the Yankees, the Tampa Bay Rays, the Yankees, and the Tampa Bay Rays. We talked about it at the beginning of the season. This was always going to come down to the Jays against the AL East, and here we are. So without further ado, here's my guest, Andrew Zuber. This is Homestand Sports. I'm Albert Vartanian. Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in, Zoobs. Those Blue Jays somehow pull off a sweep against the Boston Red Sox, coming off of a sweep against the Rangers in what was dubbed the biggest games, the biggest series of the MLB season for the Jays. They get swept. Jonah Heim and Corey Seager slapped them around the Rogers Center. They gave up 35 runs. They don't know how to pitch. They don't know how to hit. All of a sudden, what do they do to bounce back? They play the Red Sox at home and they sweep them in dramatic fashion. Walk-offs. Varshaw's hitting the ball well. Chapman can hit the ball again. David Schneider can't. We'll talk about that. But, look at these Jays. All of a sudden, we're writing them off. I'm completely off the wagon, by the way, after the Rangers series, and I'm completely back on right now. So what I need you to do for me is, take me through, because I know you went through it, your roller coaster of emotions from the first game against Texas to yesterday's game against the Boston Red Sox. I need you to speak to Blue Jays Nation right now.
Well, if you didn't basically write them off after Texas, good for you. I can't say the same. Completely. Listen, not just, Albert, you laid it out there beautifully, to be swept and then sweep. Not just that. Texas got swept. The Mariners got swept. The Astros lost, I think something like 11 straight games went the Jays' way over the weekend. Texas, I think, scored 6 runs over the course of the weekend. The Blue Jays, by the way, scored 10 runs in 3 games against the Red Sox after giving up 10 runs per game to Texas. Listen, anybody that comes on here, you interview a lot of people. Anybody that comes on here and tells you they know what is going to happen is lying and is wrong. This sport is insane. It's the best and worst thing about baseball. Yeah, what a roller coaster. If you didn't record an expletive-laden takedown of this team on Thursday after that 4-game sweep, I would say not maybe. I said it definitively at the time. That was, to me, the worst series I can ever remember as a Blue Jays fan in terms of importance, results, timeliness. 35-9, 36-9, something like that over the course of the series, looking like they don't care, looking like they couldn't possibly get up, looking like they had mailed the season in, can't pitch, can't hit, can't run, can't field, turn it around. Hyunjin Ryu is spinning gems. You got Chris Bassett. You got, as you said, you got walk-offs. You have Cavan Biggio playing his way back into the team for next year. We can get rid of Matt Chapman because we have Cavan Biggio. Insane things to say. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has been so bad this year. Home runs in 3 straight games. The only guy who hit it all on Friday, 3-run home run, wins the game. It's completely ridiculous. And is a beautiful prep for playoff baseball, which is, of course, the beauty of baseball is games every day for 6 months. Over the course of the season, the cream rises to the top. The best team is supposed to, because there's so much games, win. And then it's okay, who can win 4 games out of 7? Completely ridiculous, completely crazy sport. This is why it's my favorite. Impossible to even pin down. absolute heights, absolute depths. And here we are a week later, exactly where we started, a game up on the wild card.
I don't want to be negative, but listen, I mean, this inconsistency consistently is really concerning. But listen, on a high note, they won the series. And my next question was going to be, Zoobs, can you please do me a favor and explain baseball to me? Because clearly I don't understand. I was just talking to producer Sean about this when I got in. I'm like, why am I going in front of a camera on air? Why am I on this podcast talking about baseball? After this weekend, I pretty much wrote off the Jays. I said the Rangers are incredible. They're probably going to make the playoffs. They get swept. And the Mariners, like you mentioned, get swept by the Dodgers, which isn't as surprising, I guess. I mean, the Guardians sweeping the Rangers is incredible. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, what am I supposed to be watching for? I watch the Jays, and when it all clicks, it's beautiful. It's fantastic. And, okay, you can look at a lot of different things in that series against Boston and say, well, they could have done that better. They could have done this better. They got lucky here. Why is the center fielder getting a ball hit over his head? That makes no sense to me. Sure. So many things kind of went their way. But trying to explain what's happening right now is very difficult. But at the same time, it's fantastic because you just don't know what to expect. And I think that's the beauty about sport and baseball, especially this time.
Yeah, I mean, you all cover a lot of sports on this show.
Yeah.
162 games for a reason, right? To use NFL as a comparison, right? The season is 10% as long. So imagine judging a football team basically on one drive. That's what you're doing when you're talking about individual games in a baseball season, right? You're talking about what is 10% of 10%, which is one individual game. If a guy, they go 3 and out, this team is not going to make the playoffs. You have to. We learned this so many times. We've learned this. You have to step back and breathe and say, what does the big picture show me? What does the big picture show me? And the big picture shows you here is the baseball's crazy and random. It's a round ball hitting a round bat. Things do and don't happen for a reason. Guys hit the ball hard and it hits into gloves. Whit Merrifield hits a chopper that's basically a bunt and it ends up being a walk-off single. It's completely ridiculous to pretend you have any sort of expertise. You have, this is a beautiful exercise in listening to playoff odds. 3 days ago, the Jays playoff odds were like 30%. Now they're 75% again. Just enjoy the ride. Is sort of at this part of the year, all you can do is enjoy the ride.
I know, and it's great. I do love the ride. How can you not love the ride after what we just saw? So let's kind of break it down a bit. In that series, I mean, not even just this series, the entire season, I think this pitching, this starting rotation deserves so much credit. I mean, after Manoah went down, or not just went down, when he just wasn't pitching well, we knew that he probably wasn't going to bounce back. This season could have been a write-off a long, long time ago because the expectation was obviously Manoah's going to be even better, hopefully. You got another number 2 in Gausman. Hopefully Bassett is pretty good. And then maybe you're going to get a bounce back from Brios and Kikuchi. And if Brios and Kikuchi don't bounce back, and if Gausman's not the ace, I mean, this is a team that wouldn't even be in the conversation for a wild card right now, depending on who they would get, maybe at the deadline in terms of starting pitchers. But it could have gone all pear-shaped, and it didn't. And I think Rio deserves a ton of credit. He comes back. We don't know what to expect from him. He looked fantastic. Barrios is having a stellar season. Kikuchi's having the best season of his career. I mean, without this rotation, this Blue Jays team is nothing, Zoobs.
That is absolutely true, and I would agree with all those things. And I would also add as much flack as they got for some of the trades they made this offseason. They lead the league by a wide margin in defensive runs saved in the outfield. And it's easy to say, that's all well and good, but outfield defense is taking away extra bases. It's not just it's a nice ground ball play. It's taking away doubles. It's taking away really important hits. And with Kiermaier and Varsho, you've sort of allowed these guys to play with a little more danger. The fly balls hit to the outfield, it's not as dangerous as it was last year when, say, you didn't know if a ball hit to right field that was very catchable, the right fielder even paying attention, or the route that Lourdes Gurriel would take last year. So this is part and parcel. This is probably sort of by design, right? They have this incredible defensive outfield. They've saved a ton of runs. Kiermaier catches anything that lands inside the stadium, and Varsho is right there as well. Would be a Gold Glover if Kevin Kiermaier wasn't playing to his left. So I think, when we talk about the pitching staff, they definitely deserve the flowers. I think Bassett has been better than you could expect. I think Gausman has continued to be a front of the line guy. The Ryu bounce back, as you mentioned, the Barrios bounce back, but they've also done the job of ensuring that the guys they have playing behind them are the best of the best at this, and the numbers bear that out. They are far and away the best outfield defense, and as much as they can always sort of make it look routine, those outs that outfielders take away, those are usually pretty important hits. Those are usually extra bases. And I think that is something that maybe even taking for granted how good they've been defensively in the outfield.
Where are you at right now with Vladdy? Obviously, he's taken a lot of heat for his performances, but I mean, he looks pretty good. I mean, one of the games they won it came off his bat, in an important series.
Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is the Blue Jays season sort of incarnate, where it depends on how you want to look at it, right? Where you're like, man, he should be so much better, and then you're like, but he's also been pretty good. Like for all the problems they've had with runners in scoring position, if you sort the team by who's been best with runners in scoring position, he is so far above everybody else. He's actually been the most clutch player. It just so happens that like he's been the only one to do anything. Certainly not going to argue with 3 home runs in 3 days. Certainly not going to argue with the most important hits coming at the most important times. I think it's more of a thing, we talked about Kevin Kiermaier earlier this year and his hitting ability and how much of a plus that was. And part of the reason is because you knew the other aspects of the game he was also going to raise that value. With Vladdy, he's a little bit like a pure goal scorer in soccer or hockey, right? Where it's like if he's not hitting the home runs, what is he doing? The defense cratered, the base running cratered, and that's why his wins above replacement was like half a run. He's gone up to 0.9 from 0.4 in the last week because he's getting the hits, and that's what you do when you're the face of the franchise. That's what you do when Bo is playing injured, when Chapman's not hitting very well, when you're leaning on these rookies. Somebody's got to step up, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has, to his credit, answered the bell after some rightful, I think, criticism, some rightful focus on him. If you're going to be the guy who hits third every day, if you're going to be the guy who plays first, if you're going to be the guy who's on the posters and in the commercials, you got to do your part of the deal, and he has done that coming up. So that much is there's very little to complain about. Having good at bats, not pounding the ball into the ground. You got to like what you see if you're a Jays fan.
One guy who was definitely doing his part for a short amount of time, but a long time at the same time, Davis Schneider. Guy's incredible. But in the last 5 games, 0 for 20, which you kind of expect that, I'm assuming, with a guy who's just getting called up. He's not used to playing in the big, so this is going to happen. Maybe the cliche, the book is out on Davis Schneider, can be thrown out there. But they relied on his bat for a long period of time. And now that's kind of died down. We saw some clutch hitting, obviously from Witt and Varsho and Chapman, Kevin Biggio. But if his bat goes cold now, moving into this Yankee series and then Tampa and then Yankees and Tampa again, how much cause for concern is that?
I mean, he's a non-prospect, right? This is one of those things, like if he didn't start his first 25 games with like a 1,300 OPS, you'd never think about it. You'd never talk about it. It just so happened that he exploded onto the scene. If it's like, the 26 man isn't hitting very well, you'd be like, so what, right? It's not a guy. This isn't Bo Bichette going cold. This isn't Vladdy going cold where it's like, what do we do? You don't play him. He's not playing that well. It's not that much of a cause for concern. He's not a guy that similar to Chapman where it's like he's going cold, but we need to have him at third. Doesn't really have a position he excels at. He's a pretty good second baseman, but right now you have Biggio playing well. Listen, this type of year, you play well and you get playing time. That's sort of it is that simple. You do the long view stuff, you do the development stuff, you do that stuff. March through August, September, October, it is time to, if you are playing well, you will play. I don't think it's a disaster if David Schneider doesn't get at bats. The other guys have rised up a little bit enough. Biggio has been good enough that you can sort of replace those at bats there. I don't think it's too much of a cause for concern. Maybe if you're somebody that is penciling David Schneider into your, like, we can get rid of Chapman next year because Schneider is an extra infielder that we can use. Maybe that concerns you, but in the micro, in the short term, nothing to worry about. And I would add, he's hit the ball pretty well in that 13 inning game. He sort of got robbed. He hit the ball really hard in his extra inning at bat. That just happened to go right at gloves. I think it evens out. That's the story of baseball, right? Sometimes you hit the ball hard and it finds gloves. Sometimes you don't, and it bloops in. That being said, the limitations are what they are. There's a reason he wasn't a top prospect. There's a reason he wasn't a top 100 guy. There are holes. He happened to, he has a great approach. He doesn't swing at pitches off the plate. He doesn't swing at pitches he can't do damage on. He's done very well with that. But again, he's not a 1,300 OPS guy. He's not better than Shohei Ohtani. He's a serviceable guy that you're happy to bring in, but not somebody that you have to justify why he's not in the lineup day in, day out.
What about George Springer? 1 for 20 in that same amount of time. How do you explain that one?
This one's tough. Springer's a little tougher for me because he is a really important guy that at once upon a time was like a no doubt leadoff guy. The question on Springer is sort of twofold: are we seeing a decline? Right, he is his lowest OPS by about 40 points last I checked this season, and that is a part of being 33, 34 years old in this game and playing a high impact center field and right field for his entire career and playing on that Rogers Center turf and maybe playing through some injuries this year, but has managed to stay healthy. But also we talked, this is the story of the last week we talked and you were like, September Springer, he's here.
I know.
September Springer, he's gone. Like everything is upside down to where it was a week ago, and yet has settled in the exact same place. It's really hard to parse. He's a guy they're going to need, though, when it comes to October, when it comes to playing playoff baseball. Lengthening that lineup and giving you what you need in terms of at-bats will be important. So where I grade on him is sort of where I've graded on him all year long. Is the trend is worrying. The numbers aren't the guy that it's been that was driving the offense his first 2 years here. And the question is this something you can fix with a good, healthy offseason? Remember, he didn't spend his entire offseason getting better. He spent his offseason rehabbing an injury that happened at the very end of last year. That is important, that offseason time where you do that work. Some of that time was spent recovering and not retooling. So, he's managed to play basically every day, which was a concern after the first 2 seasons. You sort of have to have faith. This is different than the Schneider conversation. You do sort of have to pencil him in more often than not, just based on who he is and what he brings to your lineup and helping that defense. So yeah, it's somebody that they're going to have to lean on, especially as we continue to see, is Bo Bichette going to be back to Bo Bichette soon? Is he going to be able to play into that health? Are they going to be able to do that? If so, a little less concerned, but if not, Springer is a guy they are going to need to lean on for some power, for some contact, for some defense, for some base running. He's supposed to be a 5-tool guy for them, and if he's not, things get short pretty quick in that lineup.
I think the Jays are at the point where it's you guys, you just got to get in and let Springer do what he does in the postseason. I think that's where I'm at anyway with George Springer. I'm not too concerned with the 1 for 20. Get in, and we know what he can do in September. So let him cook in October, excuse me. Okay, so they have a big 6-game road trip coming up. Huge. Yankees first, 3 in New York, and then 3 in Tampa. The best team in baseball over the last 20 games is the New York Yankees, surprisingly, even though they have players who can't really hit the ball. Giancarlo Stanton, I think he's batting like 200, and Donaldson's no longer on that team, but he had a horrible season. But with that said, they went 14-6 in that time. They played Detroit, Houston, Milwaukee, Boston, Pittsburgh. So not the toughest schedule, but I just don't know what to expect from this New York Yankees team going against the Blue Jays. Like, are they going to relish in the role of playing as the spoiler, or are they, I don't know, kind of licking their wounds after such a horrible season?
I mean, Texas came in on the worst slide in baseball, and they swept them. Texas came out and immediately lost. The Yankees came in red hot. I have no idea. Here's my logic now is expect the opposite, right? So the Yankees are the hottest team in baseball. I expect them to play very poorly. I don't know. I don't know how else.
I like that. I like that logic.
I don't know how else to explain it. I'm out of logic. I'm out of ideas. I will say, you did to the point, like, if there was ever a team that is ghosts and would haunt you, and you remember very well 2021, the nail in the coffin was Robbie Ray versus Aaron Judge.
Oh, yeah.
That was the nail in the coffin game. Would I be shocked if we're sitting here 3 days later and I was like, well, the Yankees ruined the season, or the Jays swept the Yankees and now they feel great? I have no idea. There's plenty of reason to believe both sides. That being said, right, you did mention it, like the Jays swept the Red Sox, also didn't really play that well, honestly. No. Like, right, the one ball gets hit to the center fielder and the guy makes a routine catch. They're 2-1. One thing goes different in extra innings. They're 1-2 and they're not in the playoffs. That is the thing about this type of year and this time of year, is you sort of hope that the bad teams make enough mistakes that they lose and the good teams do enough capitalizing on those mistakes that they win. The question is this a good team and a bad team, or is it 2 bad teams, or is it 2 good teams? This is the quandary with the 2023 baseball season. Things are crazy. Things are upside down. I know certainly myself and plenty of other Blue Jays fans probably seeing ghosts, probably feeling a little nervous. If you could pick 2 teams you would not want to play in the closing weeks, it would be Tampa and New York. And surprise, surprise, the only teams left in the calendar are Tampa and New York. So cross your fingers and close your eyes. It could go either way.
I mean, it's so funny. We talked about this before the season started, and I think we both came to agreement that it's going to come down to the AL East at the end of the season for the Toronto Blue Jays. And here we are against the Yankees and Tampa, who obviously look good. Huge loss, actually, yesterday against the Baltimore Orioles. What a walk-off win. We'll get into that shortly as well. I like the pitchers going out right now for the Jays against the Yankees. I mean, that's giving me some optimism. Kikuchi, Gausman, Brios against Schmidt, King, and Cole. You never really want to face Cole, but, I mean, with the way that the pitching has been lately, I think there's totally signs for optimism with Kikuchi and Gausman at least stealing the first 2 games. I know it's crazy to say, but you're facing a lineup that's struggling to hit. The Jays are kind of struggling to hit too, but if I were to give an advantage somewhere in this series, it's probably in the pitching department.
Talk about upside down crazy. Picture yourself last year this time being like, well, at least the Jays have Barrios and Kikuchi going in this series, so it's going to be fine.
Right.
It's like,
yeah, I know.
I don't know, man.
I was so off the Kikuchi wagon last year, too, and I love him now. He's my favorite pitcher.
I don't know, dude. Yeah, there's a chance. I'm going to be scarred from Aaron Judge until the season ends. That's just sort of my nature, is expect him to ruin the year however he can. There's plenty of reason for optimism. There's plenty of reason for pessimism. It depends where you fall on that scale. You have to like it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You've got to like their ability to make pitches and to throw, hard innings and rely on that great outfield defense that we talked about a little bit earlier. It's the long ball, as always with these guys. I think they've made peace with sacrificing. It's like Kikuchi, a fly ball guy. We're going to sacrifice the chance that he gives up 2 solo home runs for the fact that a lot of those fly balls will fall into the gloves of these very good defensive outfielders, or these guys won't allow enough base runners through other means that those solo home runs really hurt them. The problem, of course, right now is they're not racking up the runs exactly. They didn't hit any better against Boston than they did against Texas. They just so happened to play a little bit better defense and get a little bit better pitching. So yeah, it's going to come down to the pitching. I agree with that. They're going to have to win these games tight. I don't see them wanting to get into a track meet, wanting to get into a slugfest. I don't think that is the recipe for this team. It could be. It probably should be, you could argue, with the bats that they have, but it certainly hasn't been. So I think taking your chances and winning that pitching matchup is going to be the way forward for these guys.
Kayla McGrath, she wrote a good article on The Athletic about kind of the whole wild card situation in the AL and the Blue Jays positioning. So she mentioned that, according to Fangraphs, to get into the wild card, at least for the Jays, 89 wins is probably the number, which means they'd have to go 6-6 in this final stretch against New York, Tampa. Do you see them at least coming out of it 500 or above? Honestly, I know we're talking about like not knowing what the hell we're talking about, but based on what you've seen so far, do you have enough faith in this consistently inconsistent team that they can at least go 500 the rest of the way?
It's so funny because like 6-6, it's like I could see them losing all 6 against Tampa and winning all 6 against New York. Or like, the one thing that scares me a little bit is I think, when we talk about the big talking point has been like, oh, the Rangers and Mariners play each other a bunch. So they're going to, best case scenario, one team destroys the other and a bunch of losses sink one, or they go 500 and the Jays just have to sort of match that. I think that implies that Tampa doesn't have anything to play for when they absolutely do, right? They are right there on the American League East trail. Winning the East would be a lot more helpful for them than having to host a wild card game. So that is Tampa's not taking these games off. Tampa's not cruising just because they have clinched a playoff spot. Tampa has real work to do, and I expect them to go as hard as they possibly can. Is 500 achievable? Yeah, it absolutely is. That they haven't been, for as bad as the bads have been, for as low as the lows have been, they really haven't, aside from the Texas series, like they really haven't gone on like an extended huge losing streak, right? They also haven't gone on a winning streak, which I think is what has made people so frustrated this year. There hasn't been the 11-game winning streak, but there also hasn't been the like 6-game losing streak where it seems that they can't get out of their own way. They tend to win 2 of 3, lose 2 of 3, win 2 of 3, lose 2 of 3. So to me, that recipe is like 500 sneaks you in. Yeah, I wouldn't rest my hat on it. I wouldn't rely on it if I were them, but it's certainly not going to be easy, and you could certainly do a lot worse. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be wild. It's going to be exciting.
The Jays are sneakily like the comeback kings or the comeback kids, at least, of the MLB. For whatever reason, right? I say that because they'll lose a series, like you just mentioned, they come back and they'll win one. And, short-term memory. I think that's what you need at this point in the season. And I think we've talked about this before. A lot more veterans, a lot of more been there guys on that team, which, based on the way that the Jays are playing, probably come in handy a lot more than if they were just dominating, throughout the entire season.
Yeah, and certainly a reminder that the inside the clubhouse doesn't react to these things the way that we do outside, right? They certainly aren't like, oh, we lost to Texas, it's over, right? They've been through this much more than we have. They've been on the inside. They know that like there's a game tomorrow, which is very much, you hear baseball players say that all the time. You hear John Schneider say that all the time, and people get frustrated by it, and they go, show a little fire, show a little more. But the reality is all you can do is go to the next day and try to win that next game. And as we saw this weekend, hope that the chips fall in your favor, because you never know when Texas will get swept by the Guardians. You never know when the Royals will be a speed bump for Houston. You never know when the Dodgers will have already clinched everything they need to clinch and yet still beat Seattle even though they have nothing to play for. It's a crazy game, and there's no real rhyme or reason to it sometimes. As I said before, remember Pittsburgh started the year like 22-3. Bad teams go on huge runs. Good teams go on losing streaks. With 12 games to go, boy, good luck figuring this out until it's over.
Yeah, I mean, the Cubs were written off. We thought the Reds were the best team in baseball. They're going to win their division, and here we are. Things change. But the Jays are going to get a lot of help, right? I mean, the Mariners play 10 against Texas, Houston, and then the Rangers play, obviously, the Mariners and Angels. So they're going to get help. These teams are going to lose because they're playing each other. I think the Jays just need to, just do their part. Maybe not even worry about it. Maybe there's no point even mentioning the fact that, the Mariners and Rangers, who they played, is it just like a one pitch, one inning at a time type deal? Is that where we're at right now?
Somehow, some way, they are back to controlling their own destiny, which is like, it seems, just win, baby. We're back to just win. We're back to worry about the big picture stuff in November, worry about everything else after the season. For the next 2 weeks, just win today. That's where we're back to. No real reason why or why not. Just hold on and enjoy the ride, I think, is all you can really do as a fan.
All right. Let me, before I get you out of here, I want to just hit you with some stuff going around the MLB. I want your opinion on it. One major storyline, Shohei Ohtani, out for the season, oblique, quote-unquote, oblique injury.
Sure.
He cleans out his locker, Zoobs. So my question is that the last time that we'll ever see Ohtani in an Angels uniform?
Oh, yeah, I would say absolutely. A sneaky story that came out as well on there is Anthony Rendon had a major injury and was just like, the Angels didn't announce it. So he was like, I guess I'll announce that I have a fracture. Like, I guess I'll tell people that I'm out for the year.
Yeah.
Something stinks real bad in that Angels organization. I can't say for sure what it is, but they're going to go 10 years now without a playoff spot. Having Mike Trout, having Shohei Ohtani, having Anthony Rendon, having real true top of the game generational stars and nothing to show for it. I don't think he's going back. I don't get any sort of sense that anything has happened in Anaheim to make him go, this is my home and these are my guys. They've done nothing to put a winning team on the field. They've done nothing to, other than allowing him to pitch and hit, they haven't really done anything to protect him or help him. And him cleaning out his locker, to me, not a great sign. So I would expect him to they had a stand-in for him in team photo day.
Oh.
He didn't even go to team photo day.
I know, it wasn't even a Japanese guy. It was a white guy. What the hell are we doing
not a
here?
good sign, man.
You know what? Blue Jays fans, Jays fans think they got issues with their team. Imagine being an Angels fan.
Man.
This entire season, you have Ohtani, who was the talk of the season for so long. He's still going to win AL MVP, I'm pretty sure, even though he's not playing for the rest of the season. You go to the trade deadline, you become buyers, you bring in, a stud pitcher, at least, well, we thought was a stud pitcher, and a couple other players. And then you go on this heavy-duty losing streak after the deadline. You get rid of those players. Ohtani goes down, and now he's gone. And maybe Mike Trout is going to get dealt. Anthony Rendon's injury is not being announced by the club, by the player. Like, the Angels got some serious problems. So, Jays fans, you're in a good spot. You're still cheering for some important baseball up here in September.
Can only assume next year the Angels make the playoffs without any of those guys. That's my only. Baseball,
true. Yeah, based on what we're talking about today. Yeah.
Can only assume they will clean house and then win the AL West.
Of course,
it's just the only way.
Oh my God, Zoops, what are we doing? Okay, I got another one for you, Matt Olson. Maybe the sneakiest monster season of all time.
No kidding.
I think he can hit 60. I want to get your opinion. 13 games left. They play Washington 6 times, and this is my whole thing. They gave up the most homers in the MLB. And so I think he might feast in both of those series and maybe come close by the end of the season.
Yeah, why not? Nothing to do but swing for the fences there. I think must be nice to have a team hit a bunch of home runs and have it be a frivolity, have it be like a fun, how many can he hit sort of thing.
Who's the GM of that team again?
Yeah, I mean, stop that. Yeah, listen, you're right about sort of sneaky. The how good Atlanta has been has just sort of been like implied the entire year. It's almost like not even worth talking about unless you're like, hey, did you see Acuna? He's unbelievable. Also with Olson, it's been really impressive. Just sort of the way that they've managed to lock down their young stars, and that move Freeman for Olson, right? It was sort of not that it was maligned, but it was like, is this really that big of an upgrade? And as good as Freddie Freeman has been, Olson has been everything you could possibly want him to be, stepping into that role and then some. It's been really impressive. I'm really impressed with Atlanta. I think they're the team to beat. They have pretty much everything you would possibly want them to do. And yeah, it turns out hitting a lot of home runs is a pretty good recipe for winning baseball games.
Yeah, I love Atlanta. Hopefully he does it. That's just a great storyline if Matt Olson hits 60. Okay, last one. This one really bothers me. Maybe it shouldn't bother me. Maybe it's just me getting old. But champagne celebrations for clinching the playoffs. I don't get it, Baltimore. Like, I know they're not the only team doing this. They clinched yesterday with a walk-off against Tampa. Huge series. You're chasing Tampa for the division. I totally get it. But to tarp off, like, the locker room, champagne, Budweiser, speeches in the locker room, I'm like, there's still a lot left here. You're trying to win the division. You got to get into the playoffs, obviously. You try and win the World Series. Like, that's worth celebrating, not clinching the playoffs. And I know they haven't done it in a long time, but what are we doing here? It's like Vladdy pouring the ice on whoever when they win games. And it's like, are you really celebrating that win right now?
So 2 things. We are getting old, number 1. Number 2 is I think it's a case-by-case basis. Where I'm close to allowing Baltimore because they're a young team, because they haven't been in the playoffs since 2016, which was an absolute nightmare for them, if you remember correctly.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of young players who were doubted, right? I don't think anybody was like, oh, Baltimore is going to win the American League East, or Baltimore is going to clinch a playoff spot with 2 weeks to go. I don't think anybody had that written down. I think people probably expected Baltimore to be where the Jays are right now, where it was like this team is making those steps because they had a nice back half of last year. If Houston were tarping off for a wild card berth, I'd be like, what are we doing here? But I think for Baltimore, I may allow it. And not only is it some young guys, but they also had some guys like Anthony Santander, guys who have been through that really dark period they went through in the last 7 years. They had some guys that survived that are there. I think they deserve it. But in general, yeah, I think I come closer to you, like clinching WC3. You're the 6th best team in the American League. Is that going to be? I guess it will be, right? Because it's a long season, it's the war of attrition. But I felt this way 2020, where the Blue Jays went 500 and were like the 8th best team in the American League, and they were on the field celebrating. But these teams go through a lot. It's a long year. We're old. I get it. I do lean closer to you on that. I will make the exception just this once for the 2023 Baltimore Orioles.
All right. I'll give the Orioles a pass too. I mean, if the Jays do it, by the way, this isn't like a I hate the Orioles type deal. If the Jays do it, I'm going to say the exact same thing. Why are you celebrating? People think you're going to win the World Series. Don't celebrate the 3rd spot in the wild card, because a couple years ago it didn't exist and you wouldn't be in the playoffs. So let's be real, right?
I'm with you.
Yeah, some of the I don't know why I'm so grumpy today, but some of the celebrations, like even in the dugout when a Red Sox player hits a home run and they have those inflatable dumbbells, like what are we doing, dude? Like, what is that? It's not even cool. Like the hat, the jacket. I love the jacket. You know, the Japanese headwear that the Angels use. That's cool. But like, what are we doing? Inflatable dumbbells and soups?
Funny how it happens that the Blue Jays ended up being like the only team in the league that doesn't do one now. We've gone so far back the other way that they're now the outliers for not doing it. Very strange times.
Yeah, I'm grumpy. I feel like I'm a grumpy old man. But listen, I just love baseball.
Sounds like you're a grumpy old man.
I think the title of this episode will be MLB is Upside Down, and we don't know anything. That might be the title.
I'm the perfect guy. I don't know anything.
No, you do. What do you mean? I bring you on here because you're extremely knowledgeable and I like you and you're a great guy. Okay, Zoobs, before you go, let the people know where they can follow you and hear your best stuff.
Yeah, at the Zoobs on Twitter, and the podcast is Less Than Jays. It's a complete meltdown. I don't even know what to say. The most recent episode is me losing my mind after the Texas series. I'm going to have to walk it back after the Red Sox series, or maybe I'll wait to see how the Yankees series goes. Now it's like, why record anything? I'm going to be dead wrong the moment people listen to it. But Less Than Jay's podcast, myself and Jake Goldsby, who you may know from Degrassi fame, we're on there breaking it down every week, riding the highs and lows of a baseball season like only baseball fans can.
And the Wrestling Brain.
And Wrestling Brain every Wednesday live
Come on,
Twitch.
dude. Everyone loves the Wrestling Brain. A little bit of wrestling.
I don't know. Yeah, a little Wrestling Brain every Wednesday at 10 Eastern on twitch.tv/Wrestling Brain. We go live. We talk AEW Dynamite. We go nuts. We play sound alerts. We have music. It's tons of fun. It's a crazy time. So find us there too. Thank you, Al. Appreciate that.
You are the man. Thank you so much for doing this. And I'm sure we will chat soon and try and make sense of how the Yankees swept the Jays twice. Hopefully not.
It is quite literally my pleasure. Have a great day.
All right. See you, buddy. All right, that's it for Homestand Sports. Big shout out to the Zoobs for coming on. Always love talking to that guy. So knowledgeable, and I think we're both on the same page with baseball. We love it. This is an exciting time, but we have no idea what's going on. We can only react to what is happening. So hopefully the Blue Jays, for Jays fans and Jays Nation, can finish off at least 500 and potentially make that last wild card spot. I'll definitely be having him on once again, maybe after this Yankee series, to reassess where the Blue Jays are, and definitely going to have him on during the postseason because postseason baseball is fantastic, and the Zoobs is absolutely tapped in. Okay, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'll be dropping podcasts for Homestand Sports. If you want to watch the video version, head over to YouTube, Homestand Sports. I put all the videos up there, me and the crew. For podcast listeners, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts, they will be there. So make sure you download. Leave some sort of comment or a rating, something. It helps the podcast a ton. Also, when you get to the YouTube, like the video as well. That helps a lot. That's it for today. I'm Albert Vartanian, and this has been Homestand Sports.